So you want to know more about managing stress and anxiety, huh? You sent us this book, Calm the Feck Down by Sarah Knight.
Yeah, seems like it's really resonating with people.
Yeah, it is. It's got like a 3.42 rating on Goodreads,
Wow, that's a lot.
over 8,800 ratings.
Hmm.
So we're going to dive into Knight's approach to, finding some peace in the chaos.
It's funny, her style,
Yeah,
she blends like humor and practicality.
totally.
It's not preachy. It's
Yeah.
more like a friend, giving you advice.
It is. So we're going to unpack some of her strategies, like the not sorry method, and look at some tactical tips. But before we jump in, I'm curious, what do you think about her background? I mean, she's a New York Times bestselling author,
Right.
but does that make her an expert on anxiety?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Her background isn't in clinical psychology,
Right.
but she seems to have a knack for tackling those everyday anxieties that we all face. And I
Right.
think judging from, how popular her book is,
Yeah.
a lot of people find it relatable and helpful.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so let's dive in. One of the first things that jumped out at me was how Knight tackles panic. She differentiates between productive and unproductive worrying. I feel like that's super relevant to just about everyone. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's a really crucial point.
Mhm.
She's basically saying that not all worry is bad.
Right.
And some worry can actually be like motivating.
Okay.
Like think about if you have to give a big presentation, right?
Mm-hmm.
That nervous energy, it can actually push you to prepare and do your best.
Okay.
That's like productive worry.
Right. But then there's like that unproductive worry, the kind that keeps you up all night, spiraling about things you can't control, like what people might think.
Oh, absolutely.
Have you ever experienced that kind of unproductive worry?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think we all have.
Yeah.
The key is recognizing the difference.
Okay.
And Knight, she provides like these insightful questions to help us pinpoint those thought patterns. For example, she asks, is this worry motivating me to actually do something? Or is it just making me feel miserable?
I love that.
Yeah.
It's so practical,
Yeah.
We can apply that right away.
Totally.
So then how do we shift from that unproductive to productive worry?
Well, Knight suggests a few techniques.
Okay.
One is to challenge those unproductive thoughts.
Right.
Like you can ask yourself, what evidence do I have to support this worry?
Mm-hmm.
And often we'll find that our worries are based on assumptions, or like worst case scenarios rather than facts.
That's so true.
Yeah.
I know I've been guilty of like catastrophizing
Oh, yeah,
in the past.
for sure.
Yeah.
Another technique is to like focus on what you can control.
Okay.
So let's say you're worried about a deadline, right?
Hmm.
Break down the project into smaller tasks
Right.
and make a plan
Okay.
that shifts your energy from like anxious rumination
Mm-hmm.
to problem solving.
So it's about channeling it, like taking that swirling, anxious energy. And then, okay, we got to do something.
Yeah. Put it into action.
Yeah. Be productive.
Exactly.
Okay.
And Knight reminds us, it's a process.
Yeah.
It takes practice to like recognize those patterns
Right.
and shift our focus.
For sure. Okay, so we talked about the different types of worry. Now let's dive into another key concept, triggers. Knight really emphasizes like knowing your triggers and understanding their impact.
Right.
It's not just about avoiding them,
Right.
but actually understanding how they affect you. This is where it gets really interesting because
Yeah.
she dives into like the physiological and psychological effects
Of sex.
of these triggers. And she talks about the fight or flight response.
Mhm.
What is that? Doesn't that have something to do with like cavemen running from saber-toothed tigers?
Yeah. So it's like our body's natural response to danger.
Right.
Right. So imagine you're a caveman. You're walking through the forest
Okay.
and suddenly there's a tiger.
Oh.
Your heart's racing.
Yeah.
You're breathing faster. And your muscles tense up. Right. You're getting ready to either fight that tiger
Yeah.
or run away.
Right.
That's fight or flight.
Okay, but how does that relate to our stress today? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not running from any tigers on the way to work.
Well, the problem is like our brains haven't quite caught up to modern life.
Okay.
So our fight or flight response gets triggered by like traffic jams,
Yeah.
work deadlines,
Yes.
even like social media notifications.
Yeah. Yeah.
And our bodies react as if we're, facing a life or death situation.
Oh, wow.
Even though these things are rarely actual threats.
So we're just walking around
Yeah.
with this like low-grade fight or flight going on
I got it.
because of emails and deadlines. No wonder we're all stressed out.
Yeah. And that's why like understanding your personal triggers is so important.
Okay.
When you know what sets you off,
Yeah.
Then you can start to come up with strategies to manage those responses.
So once we've identified those triggers, what can we do? I mean, I can't exactly tell my boss to, stop sending me emails or...
Well, this is where Knight's techniques for interrupting those automatic responses come in.
Okay.
She talks about things like mindfulness,
Okay.
cognitive restructuring,
Mm-hmm.
grounding exercises,
Yeah.
and journaling.
Okay, break that down for me.
Okay.
What is cognitive restructuring?
It's basically about changing those negative thought patterns.
Right. Yeah.
So let's say, your trigger is public speaking.
Okay.
You start to feel anxious
Uh-huh.
and your thoughts are spiraling. It's like,
Okay.
I'm going to mess up. Everyone's going to judge me.
Right.
So cognitive restructuring helps you challenge those thoughts
Okay.
and replace them with more realistic and positive ones.
Got it.
Like, I've prepared well.
Okay.
I have valuable information to share.
Right.
It's okay to be nervous.
Yeah.
Things like that.
So it's like instead of being swept away by those anxious thoughts, you can actually reframe them.
Exactly.
Like you're taking control of the narrative in your head.
Totally.
That's fascinating. What about mindfulness? How does that help?
Mindfulness is about being present in the moment.
Okay.
Instead of getting caught up in anxious thoughts about the future
Right.
or dwelling on the past.
Right.
Mindfulness techniques like meditation can help you focus on your breath,
Okay.
your senses,
Yeah.
and just like the present moment.
I've heard a lot about mindfulness, but I've always been kind of skeptical.
Yeah.
How does just paying attention to my breath, how does that help with something as intense as a panic attack?
It might sound too simple, but
Yeah.
it's about interrupting those automatic stress responses.
Okay.
So when you focus on your breath,
Yeah.
you're shifting your attention away from those anxious thoughts
Mm.
and grounding yourself in the present.
So it's like hitting the pause button on
Mhm.
those spiraling thoughts and just giving your nervous system a chance to
Calm down.
calm down.
Exactly. And it takes practice.
Okay.
But with time, mindfulness can become a really powerful tool for managing anxiety.
Awesome. Knowing your triggers and developing those strategies, that seems like a game changer
Absolutely.
for anyone who struggles with anxiety.
For sure.
And speaking of game changers, that leads perfectly into Knight's signature approach, the not sorry method. This is where things get really practical.
Right.
From what I've read, it's all about prioritizing what matters
Yeah.
and letting go of the rest. But I'm curious to hear your take on it.
Yeah, the not sorry method is essentially a framework for mental decluttering.
Okay.
It's about identifying your worries, categorizing them,
Right.
and then focusing your energy on what you can control.
Okay, so walk me through it. What does that look like in practice? How do we put the not sorry method into practice?
So the first step is to make a list of everything that's worrying you.
Okay.
Don't hold back.
Yeah.
Get it all out.
Yeah.
Then go through each item and ask yourself, is this something I can control?
So, for example, if I'm worried about my upcoming performance review,
Yeah.
that's something I have some control over.
Right.
I can prepare, I can practice my presentation, I can get feedback.
Exactly. You can influence the outcome.
Yeah.
But what if you're worried about, the weather on the day of your presentation?
Well, there's not much I can do about the weather.
Right.
It's totally out of my control.
Exactly. And that's where the not sorry part comes in.
Okay.
Knight encourages us to, release those worries we have no power over.
Okay.
It's about saying, I'm not going to waste my energy worrying about things I can't change.
That sounds so liberating. But I imagine it's easier said than done.
Oh, yeah.
How do we actually let go of those worries?
That's something we'll definitely delve into deeper in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay.
But for now, just consider the power of acknowledging those things you can't control
Okay.
and giving yourself permission to let them go.
I'm definitely intrigued. And I have a feeling our listeners are too.
All right, so let's circle back to that not sorry method
Okay.
we talked about, identifying those worries and figuring out which ones we can actually control.
Right.
Now, how do we use this to, actually deal with daily stress?
That's $1 million question, right?
Yeah.
It's one thing to understand it, but putting it into practice, that's a whole other challenge.
For sure. But Knight gives some, incredibly practical advice
Okay.
for making it a part of your daily life. It's like an ongoing thing, you know?
I'll just make a list and then forget about it.
No, not at all. She suggests revisiting your list, maybe even daily.
Okay.
As you go through your day, you notice what triggers you.
Mm-hmm.
Write those worries down.
Okay.
And then ask yourself, can I control this?
So I'm picturing myself with a little notebook, constantly writing down worries and then sorting them into controllable and uncontrollable.
Yeah.
It sounds a little, I don't know, obsessive.
Right.
but I can also see how it could be helpful, just in terms of like,
Awareness.
yeah,
Yeah,
awareness.
it's about becoming more aware of those worries that just
Yeah.
kind of like take over.
Yeah.
And remember, the goal isn't to get rid of worry altogether.
Right.
It's more about being picky about where we put our energy.
Okay, so once we've identified a worry that's like in our control, what's next?
Yeah.
How do we move from like worry to action?
This is where Knight's focus on problem solving comes in.
Okay.
So instead of getting stuck in that worry cycle, she's like, okay, what can you do about it?
Okay.
Break it down into smaller steps.
Mm-hmm.
Make a plan.
I love that. It's like taking those swirling anxieties and making them into concrete things. You know, like instead of freaking out about that presentation.
Yeah.
Okay, I need to research, I need to create the slides, I need to practice.
Exactly. Break it even within those tasks, like creating slides.
Right.
You can break that down even further.
Okay.
Like one slide at a time.
It's all about like those little steps, right?
Yeah.
Instead of getting overwhelmed by the big picture,
sure.
focus on something smaller.
Yeah, more manageable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That feels a lot less intimidating.
And she also reminds us that it's okay to ask for help.
Yeah, oh yeah.
You know, if there are things you could delegate, don't be afraid to do that.
That's such a good point, because sometimes we get so caught up in trying to do everything ourselves,
Yeah.
and then we end up feeling overwhelmed
Absolutely.
and stressed.
It's recognizing our limits
Right.
and being okay with asking for support.
Yes.
She also talks about setting boundaries
Okay.
with ourselves and with others.
Okay.
And this is where that not sorry part really comes in.
How does setting boundaries relate to, like, letting go of those worries?
Well, it's about recognizing that we can't do everything
Mm-hmm.
and that it's okay to say no.
Okay.
You know, often we feel like we have to say yes to every request, every invitation,
Oh, yeah.
every obligation, and that's exhausting.
It is. It really is.
And it can lead to burnout and resentment, you know?
Yeah, I've definitely felt that pressure. Like, I have to say yes to everyone.
Totally.
It's so draining.
And that's why Knight is like, get comfortable with saying no without guilt.
Oh, okay.
It's not about being selfish.
Right.
It's about protecting your time and energy
Yeah.
so you can focus on what really matters.
It's about prioritizing your well-being and recognizing that, like, saying no to something often means saying yes to something else.
Exactly.
Maybe it's a quiet evening at home,
Yeah.
or a relaxing bath, or time with people you love.
Exactly. It's about making choices that, you know, actually align with what you value.
I love that.
And that leads us to another big part of the not sorry method, accepting imperfection.
Okay, accepting imperfection. How does that fit in?
Well, Knight reminds us that we're human. You know, we're not robots.
Right.
We're going to mess up.
Yeah.
Things won't always go perfectly.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
I think that's such an important message, especially with, like, you know, today's culture.
Oh, yeah. It's all about perfectionism and comparison.
Right. We're constantly bombarded with these messages
Yes,
that make us feel like we're not enough.
exactly.
And it's so easy to get caught up in that pursuit of perfection.
Yeah.
But Knight's like, let go of those expectations.
Okay.
She even says, like, give yourself permission to fuck up.
I love that. It's like taking the pressure off,
Exactly.
giving yourself permission to be human.
Totally. And when we embrace that imperfection,
Yeah.
it opens up space for growth and learning.
Okay.
You're less afraid to, you know, try new things,
Mhm.
take risks,
Right.
step outside of your comfort zone.
Okay, so we've talked about recognizing triggers,
Mhm.
putting the not sorry method into practice, accepting imperfection. What about those times when stress just hits you out of nowhere?
Right.
Those unexpected situations, like how do you deal with that?
Oh, Knight's got a whole bunch of tactical tips for those everyday stressors.
Okay, like what?
One of her go-tos is deep breathing. Deep breathing. Seriously. It seems a bit too, I don't know.
Simple.
Yeah, simple. How can just breathing help with anxiety?
It might sound basic, but it's super effective.
Okay.
When we're stressed, our breathing gets all shallow and rapid. And that actually tells our brain that we're in danger.
Okay.
So it fuels the anxiety.
So our body is stuck in that fight or flight mode, even though the threat is just like a traffic jam
Exactly.
or a to-do list.
And that's where deep breathing comes in.
Okay.
When you slow down your breathing, you're sending a signal to your brain that it's okay to chill out.
Right.
It's like hitting the reset button on your nervous system.
Okay. I'm willing to give it a try. What's the best way to do it?
Well, Knight suggests something called the 4-7-8 breath.
Okay.
You breathe in through your nose for a count of 4,
Okay.
hold it for 7,
Mm-hmm.
and then exhale slowly through your mouth for 8.
Okay, that sounds pretty easy.
Right.
I could definitely see myself doing that at my desk
Totally.
when things are getting crazy.
And you can do it anywhere, anytime.
Perfect.
No special equipment needed.
Okay, what else?
She also talks about mindfulness for those in-the-moment stress responses.
Oh, right, mindfulness. We talked about that earlier. But how does that apply to those everyday stressors?
It's about bringing your attention to the present moment.
Okay.
So instead of getting all caught up in those anxious thoughts, just focus on your senses.
Right.
What do you see, hear, smell, taste, feel?
You know, I remember her giving this great example in the book about focusing on your senses when you're eating.
Oh, yeah.
Like, instead of just shoveling food in your mouth while you're scrolling through your phone,
Yeah.
he's like, really savor every bite, pay attention to the flavor.
The texture.
Yeah.
The aromas.
That's such a simple but, like, powerful way to practice mindfulness, you know?
Totally.
And it doesn't have to be just with meals, right? You can do it,
Anywhere.
yeah, walking, listening to music, even doing the dishes.
It's about finding those moments throughout the day to just, like, step out of your head.
Yeah,
Connect with your senses.
ground yourself.
Exactly.
Okay, and she also emphasizes, I remember this, creating a coping mechanism toolbox.
Yes.
What would go in that?
It's totally personalized.
Okay.
It could be, listening to your favorite music,
Okay.
taking a walk in nature,
Right.
calling a friend,
Yeah.
reading a book, taking a bath, anything that makes you feel calm.
So it's like a first aid kit for your mind.
Exactly.
When you need that quick dose of calm, you can just reach in and,
Pull out a tool.
yeah, use one of your tools. Perfect.
And remember, Knight emphasizes that building long-term calmness isn't just about managing those little stressors. It's about creating this, foundation
Okay.
of resilience and well-being.
So how do we do that?
She talks about the importance of self-care,
Okay.
which includes things like, exercise, sleep, healthy food.
That makes sense. You can't feel calm if you're running on empty
Totally.
and surviving on, like, caffeine and sugar.
Exactly. Taking care of your body is essential for your mind.
Yeah.
She also talks about routines.
Routines, how do those help with calmness?
Well, creating consistent routines, whether it's morning or evening,
Okay.
can give you that sense of structure,
Right.
predictability.
So it's like creating this rhythm to your days
Exactly.
instead of just constantly reacting to whatever comes up.
Yeah, like you have these anchors
Okay.
that ground you.
I like that.
And those routines can be simple,
Yeah.
It could be just a few minutes of meditation,
Right.
stretching in the morning,
Mhm.
or a bath and a good book at night.
It's those little things that bring a sense of peace.
Exactly.
Speaking of finding peace, we've talked a lot about managing stress, developing coping mechanisms, but how do we cultivate that deeper sense of calmness? That feeling of inner peace
Yeah.
that so many of us, crave.
That's a great question, and it's definitely something we're going to explore in the final part of our deep dive. We'll get into Knight's strategies for building that long-term calmness,
Okay.
including practices like gratitude, mindfulness,
Okay.
and even seeking professional help when you need it.
Right. Because sometimes you need more than just self-help.
Absolutely.
I'm looking forward to diving into that. Because who wouldn't want to feel a little more calm in this crazy world?
For sure.
We've covered so much, from triggers to the not sorry method.
Yeah, a lot of ground.
But now I'm curious about the bigger picture. How do we actually build that sense of long-term calmness? It feels kind of lofty, to be honest.
It's a great question. And yeah, it can be overwhelming,
Yeah.
But Knight, she's like, calmness isn't just for monks or yogis. It's something we can all, build up
Okay.
through effort and practice.
So where do we start? What are the key things?
One of the biggies is mindfulness.
Oh, mindfulness. Right. We talked about that, in the moment.
Yeah, for those stress responses.
But how does that work for the long term,
It's about changing how we relate to our thoughts and feelings.
Okay.
Instead of being swept away, mindfulness helps us create space.
Okay.
We learn to observe without judgment.
So it's like stepping back from those things.
Creating that distance.
Yeah, instead of getting caught up in the drama.
Yeah, you're just observing it.
I see. And the cool thing is you can practice it anywhere, right?
Totally. Doesn't have to be some big retreat.
Yeah, love that. So besides mindfulness, what else?
Knight's a big fan of gratitude.
Okay, gratitude. It seems weird to think about being grateful when you're stressed,
I get it. But research shows it can actually change your brain,
Really?
boost those feel-good hormones, reduce anxiety.
Okay, I'm willing to try, but the gratitude journal thing feels a little, I don't know.
Cheesy.
Yeah, cheesy.
It doesn't have to be that formal.
Okay.
Just take a few minutes each day to think about what you're grateful for.
Okay.
A cup of coffee, a nice sunset, whatever.
Enjoy those little moments.
Exactly.
Instead of forcing it when you're already freaking out.
And those little moments can add up.
Right, to a more positive outlook.
Exactly. Now, what about those big stressors, the unavoidable stuff? Job loss, illness, relationships?
Ooh, yeah, the heavy stuff.
Well, Knight emphasizes self-compassion.
Self-compassion.
Yeah, treating yourself with kindness.
I think I'm better at giving compassion to others than to myself.
A lot of us are,
Yeah.
but we're human. We mess up. We deserve compassion, especially when we're struggling.
It's like silencing that inner critic.
Yeah, and giving yourself the same support you'd give a friend.
I think a lot of us need that reminder.
For sure. Along with self-compassion, Knight talks about emotional resilience.
Okay, emotional resilience.
Yeah.
What's that?
It's that ability to bounce back,
Right.
to deal with challenges without falling apart.
Okay, so like inner strength.
Yeah, and flexibility to adapt.
Is that something you're born with, or can you learn it?
You can definitely build it
Okay.
with practice. Mindfulness and gratitude help. But also, like, challenging negative thoughts, setting realistic expectations.
It's about a more like positive mindset.
Yeah, and realistic, you're not pretending everything's perfect,
Right.
but you have the tools to deal with the tough stuff.
Okay, so we've got mindfulness, gratitude, self-compassion, emotional resilience, anything else.
One last important thing, seeking professional help when you need it.
Right. It's okay to ask for help.
Exactly. Sometimes self-help isn't enough.
Yeah.
A therapist can give you that support.
Right, like a coach for your mental health.
They can give you tools and a plan.
Okay, this deep dive into Calm the Fuck Down has been amazing. We talked about worry, triggers, the not sorry method, breathing exercises, mindfulness,
So much good stuff.
and we went deeper into gratitude, self-compassion, resilience. It's been a journey.
Definitely.
The biggest takeaway for me is that calmness, it's not some magical thing.
Right.
It's about making choices
Yeah. Conscious choices.
that put our well-being first.
It's about taking control
Yeah.
and learning to navigate life's ups and downs.
Well said. Sarah Knight reminds us we can do anything, but we can't do everything. So what one thing are you going to do this week to calm the fuck down? Pick something, even a tiny thing, and see what happens. We bet you'll be surprised. Let us know how it goes. You can share on social media or our website. Remember, managing stress is a journey, not a destination. And sometimes, a little bit of fuck it can go a long way.